Hello there, and welcome to another episode of The Art of Feeling Better. And today I'm going to be discussing a topic that I get so many questions about, right? And I get asked so many times to cover, and I have resisted for reasons which I will go into in another episode, because I've had a big revelation, guys, big revelation in this last few weeks. So there's lots to unpack, and I'm going to do a specific episode on that. But as a little side quest, one of those things that have come up during this revelation is the topic of my hair colour. My hair colour. It is probably what I get asked about the most. All the work that I do, all the things that I do, my hair colour is definitely the topic of conversation. And I've never really thought about it before. It's just something I do. Always have done. And it wasn't until somebody specifically asked me the question and linked it to my work as a mental health professional and a wellness specialist, and linked it to Mojo School, and linked it to this very podcast, The Art of Feeling Better. And I'd never made the connection before. I'd never connected these two things together around the topic of, does my hair colour affect my mood? Does my hair colour have more to do with my identity and my sense of self and my own well-being and my own view of myself and my own feelings about myself? And I've never really considered it, because I started dyeing my hair when I was probably about 14, 15, like everybody did in the 90s. It's just what we did. I had the lovely crunchy corkscrew perm as well, like a load of mousse and hairspray. So it's really high and crunchy curly. Unfortunately, I don't have any evidence. Otherwise, I would be putting a picture on here to give you the evidence. But there isn't any, so tough luck. Just trust me, that's what happened. And I started to dye my hair at the same time. And I went through this purple phase. Purple, like a really dark purple, was the first time I ever experimented with hair colour. And it was the same time as I was getting into my punky phase, my angsty phase, my grungy punky, I have something to say that's unsaid phase. And it probably did correlate with that at the time, although I didn't see that. I was experimenting with my own identity, how I wanted to portray myself, how I was feeling, and the current trends at the time, or trying to break out of the current trends at the time and do something a little bit different. It's when I first started to I had my nose pierced and my belly pierced. And I was just experimenting with my style and my identity. And I can remember at the time, it was when I was going through this phase of everything had to be black. I wanted everything black. I had a long black trench coat, and my room was black. My ceiling was black. Going for the witchy aesthetic, the full-on goth phase was coming through as part of that exploration, right? So everything was lots of candles and lots of very, very witchy stuff, and pentagrams and black cats and bats and all kinds of stuff, which obviously now I'm older and I work in that space a lot. Those representations and those correspondences mean some very different things, because it's not just about the aesthetic anymore. But at the time, it was just exploring and finding my way through some of these topics that interested me, and some of the looks and the styles and the identity that that I felt most comfortable with. When the purple hair dye came out, I remember my dad saying, it's just a phase, she'll grow out of it. Now I'm 47. Clearly it's a really long phase. But yeah, that was always the general consensus, wasn't it? When young people start to explore and they start to behave in certain ways, present in certain ways, they get into a certain genre of music, or they start to have some behavior patterns. And usually when it's less than socially acceptable, should we say, or less than favorable, or if it's something that will be considered a negative connotation, a negative identity, a negative behavior, it's considered a phase that you'll grow out of. Whereas if something is considered to be really socially acceptable and positive and within the current standards that we attain, or that we're supposed to attain, then it would never be said, oh, it's just a phase. They're doing what we want them to do, but it's just a phase. It's like, no, do that. That's a great box. Fit in that box. That's the box we want you to be in. Definitely carry on with that. That is a lifetime's work. You must stay in that lane, stay in that box. Whereas if we kind of break the mold a little bit at an early age, if we are starting to communicate something that's slightly different to our family members or our local community or our local culture, then it's not really generally seen as a positive, is it? It's seen as a phase that they'll go out of, and then they'll get normal again. My least favourite word. And they'll behave again as we want them to do in a socially acceptable way. And they'll get back into the box. They're like the beige, boring square boxes. They're just copy and paste that we do in society. And they'll find one of those and be happy and be satisfied. They'll get in one day. This is just a phase. And my challenge to that is, maybe we need to have that reverse on that. Maybe the phase, maybe that point in time when young people are exploring and communicating something, maybe that's the time to actually listen, to pay attention, to understand that young person is actually exploring what matters to them and is exploring their own voice, their own style, their own identity that they feel most comfortable with. And maybe that's the time to nurture that as a positive. And if there are some unhealthy behaviours attached to that or some harmful behaviours attached to that, obviously that's the time to intervene and to nurture and to guide. But still, they have to be experienced and moved through, right? You can't do things for people. You can't fix people. We know that now. You have to guide and support while they do that piece of work. But maybe trying to nudge people into the wrong spaces. And I probably sounds like my parents were really challenging for me. They were. My parents were great with that. They were just like, yeah, she's doing what she's doing. So I didn't have any particular pushback. I'm just making an observation. I know a lot of people that I do talk to about this when they ask me. This is the conversation that we have. I wasn't allowed to do this, or when I started to do X, Y, or I was told that it was bad or naughty or silly or childish, or we don't do that in this family, or don't show us up in front of the in-laws or the neighbours or the people at school or whatever it might be, trying to clip those wings and shove that beautiful creative exploration of identity back into a box that doesn't feel comfortable. And I wonder whether so many young people now, so many people, older people, my generation, are starting to really struggle with the concept of identity because they never had that freedom to explore, and they were never allowed to explore. And I'm really fortunate that I was. Although I still had those little comments, it's just a phase. It's just a phase. I remember it really well. And whereas it wasn't a negative, you're not doing this, it was a nod at the fact that, well, this isn't what we really do. We'll let you for now, but you probably will have to change at some point. Now that kind of gave me fuel to the fire, and that my whole identity, my whole life's work's been based on that challenge response, I guess. That PDA, even though I was a very good girl, very academic girl, that pathological demand avoidance thought that came in to say, you're going to be like that because we're kind of telling you that that's right. And it immediately didn't feel right in my body. So in a very non-threatening, non-challenging way, I spent the rest of my life breaking that mold and challenging those perceptions and challenging those stereotypes and actually becoming a very well-rounded, confident, articulate, intelligent, creative, successful woman. And again, a woman in this sort of, that's another thing to have to kind of deal with. By doing the things that I've done that I'm really proud of, not always been easy, but I feel like I've managed to carve that space out for myself and authentically and every step of the way. I've thought, rather than being challenging in person and being aggressive and saying, I'm not doing that, which is the typical sort of teenage angsty behaviour, I just kind of locked away those thoughts. Thought, that's an interesting perspective. I shouldn't be doing that. And I knew, and maybe I just had that sense of self from the very beginning, perhaps, because I was quite shy and massive people pleaser, massive overachiever. If you see my Batman origin story, if you haven't, go and have a look, but you'll understand that, I had a lot of these distorted thoughts and behaviours like we all do, and beliefs about myself from my childhood experiences. And so I was very, very well behaved, and I was doing really well at school. I was really academic, but inside, and this is the part of the story I want to share now, inside, I can remember consistently throughout my entire life, I have known who I am. I've known who I am. I've known roughly kind of why I'm here and my purpose. And I didn't have a clue how that was going to manifest or what I was going to do about it. But I've had that very, very strong from childhood sense of self and sense of when people, maybe it's because I'm naturally an energy sensitive person. I've honed that into a skill now, and I've learned and I've I've trained in these areas. But as a kid, you don't have that, do you? You just kind of, you think everybody experiences the same thing as you. And, understanding what people actually mean before they say anything. And then when they say something, it's the opposite, their energy's throwing out. It was a very interesting experience for me growing up. It was all part of that same process of understanding inside what makes me me. And then having all these weird experiences with school saying this is what's right and wrong, and parents saying this is what's right and wrong and socially acceptable, and this is what we should be doing. And never having that outward challenge like a lot of teens and a lot of young people did. Still towing the line still, but I was clocking the whole time. I was thinking, well, that's interesting. I'm not doing it. Definitely doesn't feel right, but I'm going to have to find a way now. Let's find a way through where I can kind of not put my head above the parapet, not become problematic, because my people-pleasing overachiever drive was so strong, but I still had that bit in me thinking, well, that's not right for me. That isn't me. That's not who I am. That's not what I am. That's not why I'm here. I shan't be doing it. I'm going to find a way. And I think I've done that. I believe I've done that. So the thought of my hair colour being directly attached to some of these things has never crossed my mind until I've been kind of challenged and pushed to do so. Part of the conversation that I've had recently and where my revelation has come from has been around this concept of being authentic, right? Authenticity. And a few people lately, I'm really grateful for this as well, because I always try to be as authentic as I possibly can in that moment. And a few people have said that's one of the things that they think about. One of the words that comes to mind is authentic. And I'm really grateful for that, because that's what I hope for. But it got me thinking about all these things, and am I being really authentic? And have I been truly authentic every step of the way? Or has my stress response, my threat response kicked in, and have I masked more than I thought I have? And all these really interesting shadow works type topics. And that's obviously my vibe. That's what I do, is shadow work. So I've been jumping in with both feet, because you have to walk the talk, my friends. So every time there's an opportunity for me to learn, and then when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I've had some great people around me recently throwing little truth bombs at me and just checking my blind spots, right? Because I can't be an effective coach and kind of way shower and guide for anybody else if I'm not doing the work. So I've always had coaches in my space for years. I had a few years gap actually where I didn't have anybody, and that was obviously problematic, because there are a few things and decisions and spaces I got into which I probably wouldn't have done if I'd had someone checking my blind spots. So getting back to working in this way now, some amazing people, ladies actually, but amazing women have been checking my blind spots and just giving me little bits of food for thought. The concept of hair colour, oh my gosh, I've just been filming a little bit for social media around, does my hair colour affect my mood? So you'll see that really soon. And it sparks the thought of actually doing this podcast episode to take that a bit deeper, to make sense of the reference of this little social media snippet you'll see. So I've been considering and I've been contemplating the thought around my hair colour. And the answer to this very long-winded answer to the question really is, yeah, my hair colour is massively, massively impactful in my life, massively important to me. I had never really thought about it, but it's quite obvious when you look back through my social media. And when you look back to the history of me, you will see that hair colour plays a really predominant part in my life. And it's such a superficial thing, isn't it, right? I could shave my head off tomorrow and I'd still be exactly the same person. But to me, my hair is definitely connected with my identity, how I perceive myself and how I feel. And it really feels like a kind of a mood ring. I don't know whether that makes any sense at all, but a mood ring is how my hair kind of feels to me. I'm just going to show you. I don't know whether this is back to front or not. I don't know, but my cup, I'm having my cup of tea. Thank you. You know who you are, got me the present. It's a perfect cup for me. I incite this meeting to rebellion. The lovely Emmeline Pankhurst. My favourite mug. So my hair colour has most definitely been attached to my identity. And over the years, thinking back to that little 14, 15-year-old young girl who got a purple hair dye out, I was like, oh God, this feels like, nobody else has purple hair right now. I feel unique. I feel different. I feel powerful in a way. I feel like I have my own identity that isn't like everybody else's. Okay, I had the perm, I had the 90s perm, because I looked around and got, everyone else got that, I better go and get that. So I went and got the perm. And then immediately regretted it and spent ages trying to get rid of it. But the hair colour, that was new, especially in my social circles. Nobody else coloured the hair. I liked that. I liked that I had felt that I was being conditioned in the softest, sweetest way by my parents to behave in a certain way and to be a certain person and to fall, because what parents do, right? You try your best with the knowledge you have to nudge your children into a space that's going to be great for their future and it's going to be socially acceptable and is going to make them happy. And you already know what you do. So my lovely parents have been doing that, but I knew that I was doing something different. I knew that what I was kind of being modeled and shown felt so alien and so disconnected and so not me, that without upsetting them, I wanted to make sure I could get into the space where, no, I'm going to be me and I'm going to do it my way. And I know I'm going to do it my way. But how does that look? So yeah, the whole journey from then until now, which is 30 odd years, has been part of that process of exploration and finding out who I am and trying to keep those attachments. In Mojo School, we go into loads of detail about things like that. Those attachments and those relationships, those family dynamics, and keep all of those things in place, be a parent myself and understand what that means in terms of parenting. Does it mean that my children then feel like they have to constantly go out and dye their hair to fit into a different social pattern? You know, there's so many thoughts that go into it when you start to dig a bit deeper. But it's shaped a lot of my life. It's such a superficial thing, right? So I had a period of time where I didn't dye my hair. And this is an interesting point to make, and it's very relevant. I went from being this super creative. I was training to be a makeup artist at the time, and I was looking to go into film, and I experimented with all these different hair colors with the purples, loved it, it was great. And then I ended up getting pregnant at 20. So my first baby was on the way, and my immediate, even though I'd already had that instinctive sense of, right, this is who I'm going to be, I'm going to explore this, and my hair color is going to be a thing, and this is definitely my identity. The second I found out I was expecting, my whole mindset shifted, because that strong drive to be accepted in society and to do the right thing and to go along with the norm, that flock response that I talk about quite a lot in Mojo School. Even though it wasn't really natural to me, and I've spent a good few years fighting that and showing that, no, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to do it my way. Something at that time made me shift into, right, well, I can't do that anymore then. I'm going to have to be a sensible, mature lady, socially acceptable, because now I'm going to be a mother. There is a certain set of conditions and a certain set of expectations on me, and I have a child to think about. And I didn't really think too much into it at the time, but that was definitely a feeling of, right, I'm going to be normal, just be normal. And then I dyed my hair and I had nice blonde highlights, and I was working in the industry at the time. My career was starting as a makeup artist and a holistic therapist. I was doing lots of mobile stuff at the time. So I thought, I can't really wear my combats and the cool things that I was enjoying wearing, because that doesn't look green professional therapist. So I better get a white tunic like everybody else does in the industry. Block response massively kicked in. And I was just going through emotions for a good few years, being mummy, going to mummy clubs, feeling alien there because there was all these ladies that were just, it seemed like a different space to me, having different conversations. It's just a really bizarre time. And you can look back at pictures of me, and I went through these phases over these couple of years when I started having the babies. Of I had blonde hair, and then I had brown hair, and then I had blonde hair again, and then I had brown hair with highlights, and that I was like screaming to get out. Like, I'll change something, but I'll stick within the rules of the box. And you can see the pictures, the light in my eyes was gone. There wasn't anything there. It was just like, there's the mask. That didn't have, I've had a few years in my teens of being me, and now I can't be me anymore because it's not socially acceptable. And I bought into that, and I was really into that space for a good while. You know, my wedding was very much, me and Craig were really young. Right, what do you do at a wedding? What does everybody want? What does the family want? What are we meant to do? Right, I need a big white dress. Sure. I need a church. Not in any way religious. It's not, I don't hold a particular religious faith. And how awful is that? And how disrespectful to people who do have a faith, that I thought I needed to get married in a church because that's what everybody did and that's what the family wanted me to do. And I couldn't be authentic enough to have that voice at the time. So building the salons, the tunic was on, and I was just doing what everybody was expecting, or what I perceived that everybody was expecting. And I look about 10 years older than I am now, because it just wasn't good for me on the inside. It wasn't who I was, and it wasn't authentic. So I went through a little bit of a phase where I started to really, my health was taking a toll. I've talked about this before, because I was burning out and I was trying to chase something that was going to make me feel better again. And I thought, well, if I just work a bit harder, I might get that. I mustn't be quite there yet. I need to do more. I need to prove myself. I need to be more. And then maybe that feeling of acceptance, and maybe I'll be able to, pivot in some way, or I might be able to be myself again because I'll have the credibility to do that, or I'll have completed some level of this computer game that will allow me to unlock my new character. And that obviously didn't happen. I just started feeling more and more shit. So there came a point where I thought, you know what, I'm done. I'm gonna dye my hair, because that was the last time I remember feeling like myself. So I remember putting out a post. This is like years ago, years and years ago. But Facebook was a thing, so it wasn't like the 1800s. I put out a post because I couldn't decide whether to go bright orange, like Hayley Paramore at the time, or bright red. I think Rihanna had her red hair at the time. Can't remember, but there was two things that I was thinking of, bright orange or bright red. And I put it out on social media to see what, obviously, that's what you do. What does anybody else want me to do? What would you like me to do? And I remember one of my friends at the time, Claire, she was the last person to comment saying, gotta be red. And she actually passed away the day after she posted that comment. So in honor of her and ready for the funeral, I dyed it Halo Box like fire engine red, like redder than red. And immediately, the second I dried my hair, so those of you that have ever dyed your hair before, you go and you do the process and it's a pain in the bum and it just gets messy. And then your hair's in a towel and you take the towel off. You're like, oh, and then you get the hairbrush out and the hairdryer out and you start to dry it. And through that process, I was like, oh, I'm back. And every bit of me lit up as like, yeah, this is what I should be. This is definitely me. Before The Greatest Showman came out, the whole This Is Me soundtrack was playing in my head before it was even written. And then I went back into my salon. All right, girls, to everybody, I'm back, bitches. And I changed my look and I changed what I was wearing to feel more comfortable. And obviously I had the kids at the time and then I was having more babies. I was like, you know what? I'm going to be me and I'm going to be authentic, and it's going to make me a happier person. It's going to make me a better parent. It's going to make me better at my job. I'm hopefully going to be able to influence other people to do the same thing and just be brave enough to step out into the space, because actually nothing happens. No, there was no ridicule. There was no judgment. There was no, this perception of what could go wrong. I've been made to understand by the media and by parents and family and teachers that it's a bad thing if you do that. There's some danger somewhere and people might not like you, or people might judge you, or people might say mean things, or you might not get the same opportunities. Absolutely nothing happened. In fact, the opposite, I would say. My business grew massively because I had a USP, a unique selling point. There was a point of difference. I was different to everybody else. I started to get the tattoos, and people used to see my hands in images doing things, and they'd find me and book me because they knew it was my work. The hair, I had at least 3 people that would follow me in the local area, seeing me out and followed me because they wanted to get my details to book me because they recognised the hair. So it flipped on its head a little bit and it became something different to what my expectation had been. And the red hair that was meant to be very temporary for Claire's funeral lasted probably 10 years, nearly 10 years anyway. And those of you out there who met me in that phase will know that full well. It was the red hair was the thing all the time. That's what I was known for, the red hair and the tattoos. And looking back again after this revelation and reflecting on these different points in my life when I had the varying hair colours, from the purple in the teenage years to the bright red in the 20s, that gap in between where I had the blonde and the brown, which is absolutely nothing wrong with blonde and brown. It's beautiful hair colours. For me, it wasn't my comfort. It wasn't why I felt comfortable. So right the way through to the red definitely was connected to my energy at the time and connected to what I was doing and how I was feeling. And as soon as the red came in, I got into this fiery strength. It's where the nickname came from. Mama Wolf came from that point, because I was very opinionated in the nicest possible way. I was getting into this space where I was getting a bit older and I was a parent, and I was massively bothered by the injustices that I was seeing, and I was feeling the call to action, and their hair kind of propelled that along the way, and people were standing up and taking notice. And I was speaking on the stage and I was putting together my shows and I was talking about my own industry, the fashion industry. I was getting more work because I looked dead cool, right? I was this rock and roll chick and I was doing this great work and I was getting loads of business. But at the same time, the more business I got in that arena and the higher I climbed within fashion, the more toxic I could see it was. And the more I was wrestling with myself to try and, do I stay in this space? Because that's my life's work and it's on my bucket list. And I don't think I've achieved expert level yet. or do I jump out now and challenge it? It was a really tough time thinking about what I was showing my kids as well, and what we're teaching my kids by working in this way. So I was really feisty and I was opinionated, and I was the governor for my kids' school. I was setting up petitions, and I was challenging and challenging and challenging any injustice that I came across during that time. I was really in that space, and I was loud and I was vocal and I was challenging, and it felt like I was doing the right thing and what I was here to do. I have absolutely no regrets at that, because it was absolutely at the time the right thing to do. But I truly believe if I didn't have the red hair, that would have had a big impact on the way I projected things and the way I was speaking and the way I was feeling about myself. So it's really interesting, isn't it, to think about that? Because I'm still me, right? I'm still me all along. But I felt very different. And in terms of the mood ring analogy, there came a point there where it became a bit of a trend, and a few people were going red, and there was lots of bright red around, and it was looking cool. Everybody was happy and everyone was getting more confident to try new things. And then I thought, I don't think I want to be red anymore. Was that a challenge? Was that like, oh no, everyone's doing it, so I need to be different again? Was that a need in me to be different? Was that part of whatever was going on in my mind at the time, that I felt like I needed to challenge perceptions and I needed to stand out in a different way, and I needed to be, was my identity wrapped up in being unique and different? Because I can remember feeling uncomfortable at being the same, which is so bizarre for me, because I know this flock response, it's usually the comfort zone. Be like everybody else and feel comfortable. And I remember just feeling uncomfortable when I felt the same, which is really weird. And I still can't put my finger on that. But I like to be different, don't I? So that's just my different psychological response. Definitely had that people pleaser drive. I wanted to be able to achieve and do things and fight injustice and work harder. And the people pleasing thing was there, but the block response was not there at all. I wasn't trying to fit in at all. So I started to change. I thought, I don't want to be red now because everyone's red. So I went back to purples, and you'll see the socials if you look back far enough. There was a period where I was bright purple and dark purple, and I went blue for a little bit, and teal and green, and lots of different. I was changing every few months. I loved it, and it was just unique and different. And people would say, what colour is she going to be this time? And obviously I had the technical skills because that was the area I was working in. So it wasn't, I didn't ruin my hair in any way. And I loved that. I loved exploring and working out how I felt. And it really was a case of how I felt at the time. And I just would go and I would change it, and then I would feel a different way for a while. And then when I was ready, I would change it again. And looking back, it definitely was. It was around my mood, and it was around what I was saying, what I was doing, and how I was feeling at the time. And then I went into my, what I call my pastel phase, which I'm kind of at now. And I've been backwards and forwards between this pastel phase and the bright red again and again, depending on my mood. So I went into this lovely space as things were fading out. And actually, it came from just, those of you in the biz will know, it just started fading. Colour started fading, and I was too burnt out and knackered and tired and overworked to do it. And it was just fading. And people say, oh, I love your hair. What colours have you used? So this is like, I don't know, because it's not a colour, it's just washed out. But it started to make me think, oh, actually, it's not too bad. I might go with this and just refresh it a bit and make it into an actual colour. So I started experimenting with like the unicorn and mermaid hair, and I'd have different colours, different tones, and I'd do it in different ways every time, and just experimenting, getting creative. It was part of my creative fix, and I really enjoyed the whole process. And I felt different every time I dried my hair and it was a different colour. I felt different. Sometimes I would feel really calm and in my kind of chilled, energetic, meditative space. Sometimes I would feel energized and empowered. And it was very much like the sort of representation of the chakra system. When I was red, I was grounded, and I was focusing on safety and stability, and I was talking about things that were important, and I was creating that safe space for myself and that power, fire energy. And then as I was moving up to the pastels, the lilacs and the pinks and the softer colours, I was in much more of a contemplative, meditative, spiritually developing. I was doing a lot of work around my spiritual development during those hair colour phases. Didn't realise. It's only when I look back, I'm like, oh, I can see the correlation now. And now I'm in this, bit Frenchy from Greece. So this is the most recent, and I wanted to do this just to create a bit of footage around, does my hair colour affect my mood? And I'm feeling really calm, really grateful, really lots of love around me at the moment. I've got a little grandbaby on the way. We've got lots of people around and friends and family, and we've had quite a lot of traumas over the last few years, and it feels now that we're in this space of we've just got a nice bit of calm. And this seems to be reflected in the choice of hair colour. A nice soft pastely pink with a few little purpley accents through it. I'm in a really deep contemplative and spiritual development phase again. Yeah, I mean, who knows what's going to play next? I have no idea. I have got my eye maybe on a little bit of tealy, turquoisey, mermaidy colour. It keeps playing around in my mind that I might explore next. But I don't know. It depends on what the mood ring says. It depends on how I feel at the time. So I guess my question to you is, how does your hair colour affect your mood? Does it? Do you have any hair? Do you have short hair? Do you have long hair? Do you have curly hair? Do you have straight hair? Do you dye your hair? Do you not dye your hair? Do you love the fact that you've never ever dyed your hair? Do you wish you could dye your hair and you really want to play around with it, but you just don't quite have the courage yet? Do you have some issues with your hair? Do you have some medical issues that have affected your hair? And how does that affect you? Do you have something hereditary in your family that's affected your hair? How has that affected you? It's just an interesting topic, isn't it? Really interesting. It wasn't something that I ever thought about talking about until I was nudged to do so. And I guess it's part of my stepping into that authentic sharing space and recognizing that sometimes things that I don't think really matter, or I don't think people are interested in, or they really want to, the sides of me that the people aren't really interested in seeing, sometimes they do. And I'm just making assumptions there. And so many people ask me questions. I thought, well, actually, maybe it is something that people are interested in. And people are scrolling through and they're trying to find things that make them feel good. And they're trying to find tips and they're trying to find relatability with people that they're finding on their social media. And I'm missing that because I'm focusing so much on throwing out tools and throwing out things that might help people, but I'm forgetting that actually just sometimes some authentic sharing and some little interesting thoughts and topics like this one to get people thinking about their own identity and their own stuff. Sometimes that's something that I often neglect and fail to do. So it's part of my revelation this week of things that are going to be amping up, switching up and changing slightly in the way that I do things. And it's all part of evolution, baby. It's what happens. We start somewhere, we learn, we reflect, we grow. So I'm in a real growth phase at the moment. And the hair is definitely reflecting that. So what will it be next month? Who on earth knows? I don't know. I'm just really fortunate that I have the ability to do that and that it's something that matters to me. Maybe completely different for you. And both of those things are absolutely fine and dandy. So let me know. I'd be really interested to read any comments you have on this topic, any thoughts you have about my story, or anything that you want to talk about when it comes to this kind of thing. And it can be something around anything that you would find potentially superficial. It could be around the tattoos. It could be around wearing makeup. It could be around hair color. It could be around the clothes you wear, the music you listen to. But let's think about that. Think about that in terms of identity. Some of those really superficial things that we don't really pay too much attention to, how deeply ingrained are they within our souls? How much do they mean to us? Do they affect our mood? And if the answer is yes, and those things do affect our mood, then my little point of action today for you to do is exactly what I've been doing and reflect on that. And if there is something in your life that actually does affect your mood, then maybe look at that a bit deeper and use it to help support you through whatever it is you're going through. And if something helps you, regardless of what other people think of it, something makes you feel good and really on the inside, you feel like it's part of you and you're restricting it and masking it and hiding it and you are, pushing it down and putting it into this little boring beige box, then maybe you need to think about jumping out and stepping into that sparkly, star-shaped self that you've been hiding and masking for so long and stop that repression. And if there is something out there about your identity that has the opposite effect, if you're doing something or presenting in a certain way that you actually think this is harming me, this is not good for me, or this is something that I really shouldn't be paying too much attention to, then maybe think about that and how you can reframe and how you can think differently about that particular aspect of self. We just need to focus on what makes us feel good, what lights us up, and being our true, shiny, sparkly, star-shaped, authentic self. I will leave you with that thought for now, and I cannot wait to see you for the next episode of The Art of Feeling Better. I have some really cool guests coming up very soon, and I am going to be doing a full episode on my current revelations. So stay tuned for more, and I will see you very soon.